Hey, good morning, Center for Spiritual Living, Palm Desert and beyond. Grateful to be with you this morning with my brother who's graciously agreed to come back, the Reverend Daryl Jones.
Hey.
One of the things I'll always remember about you, brother, is that the last four digits of your phone number are funk, right?
Correct. Still 450 funk.
Daryl Jones, the minister of funk. All right, good. I just love that word, funk. Not like funk, but like funk.
Yeah.
So good morning, community. It's such a blessing to be with you again for our daily offering. It is a beautiful Thursday, wherever you are. We're so blessed to be together, and I'm so grateful to have Trey in the Swing Point Media producers booth. We appreciate him from Swing Point Media helping produce the show here, and my brother Reverend Daryl in Chicago in his beautiful condo. What you just mentioned, you've been there for about a year now. You and your beautiful wife.
Yeah, we closed mid-June of 2019, and Monday was my wife Carrie's birthday. We literally put our apartment together in a week so that we could have a birthday party for her a year ago.
It's good to be motivated. So no boxes just sitting around everywhere. It's like
yeah. It was a quick process, and it's just crazy to think that a year later we had 50 people here a year ago. We couldn't necessarily do that this past week. So
love it.
It's kind of interesting.
Kinda.
It is.
Very. So, hey, will you? I know you're sitting behind the keyboard. Will you give us a pray in?
Sure.
Welcome to the Power Hour.
Power Hour.
That was wasn't that Schuler's in the Crystal Cathedral? The Power Hour, Hour of Power, something like that.
I'm not certain.
Something like that. This is our hour.
How about you do a little bit of a prayer and pass it to me to start?
When the host becomes the guest. So grateful this morning to gather together as a spiritual community virtually, but always connected in our heart space, always connected in our love, always connected in our joy and our mutual appreciation for life, and our mutual connection through struggles and challenges, all the things that bring us together as a family. Whether you attend Center for Spiritual Living Palm Desert regularly and consider yourself a member, or whether you're just participating this morning, and I don't say just like to minimalize it, but just say just. And this morning, I know that each one of us are blessed somehow, that we're aware of our blessings, whether we're spending precious time with our families at work and taking a few moments just to tune in and listen, or wherever we are, that we're blessed. We're aware of our blessing this morning. And that in the midst of any challenge, circumstantially in the world, whatever's going on, that our intention of appreciation to transform our worldview, and so that we see the blessing everywhere. I'm grateful for today, and I'm grateful for this time with my brother Daryl. I'm grateful that somehow this time that we share does something for each one of us, that allows us, that grants us, that lifts us, that inspires us to see the blessings that exist. I am grateful, and I pass the word to my brother Daryl for song, for prayer, for whatever he wants to do.
So I say in the gratitude of what has been spoken here by my brother, knowing that the gratitude is a generative consciousness, a generative, giving, creative essence, a mindset, a heart set. And so let us cultivate that here and now by simply saying, I am grateful. I am grateful for my brother, Reverend Charles. I am grateful for this Center for Spiritual Living. I am grateful for all that is happening in life right now. I put nothing outside of the circle. I welcome it all to the interior and know that God is all of it. The theme and the word for me today is togethering as opposed to othering. Let us come together, all of us. And our pluses, our minuses, our knowings and unknowings, our biases and our clarities. I just say yes to God revealing itself in this conversation in the most powerful way. And now we can just simply sit back and play in the flow.
Yes.
So it is.
So it is. Will you sing just a little something? I want to hear your voice.
Sure. So the chords I was playing were from A Star Is Born. Tell me something, girl. Are you happy in this modern world? Or do you need more? Or is there something else you're searching for? I'm falling. And in the good times I find myself longing for a change. And in the bad times I fear myself. Interesting song.
I haven't. Is that? So that's the remake of the. Was that the song from the original or from the remake? I haven't seen the movie. Star Is Born.
I don't know. I think that Bradley Cooper wrote that.
Oh, okay.
But Carrie and I, that's one of the ways we've been keeping ourselves sane is singing some songs together. And so we've been singing that one. So those are the chords that were up, and that was the prayer today.
I love it. We're blessed. You know, I got in trouble. I had Amy Steinberg on, who, by the way, sends her love live right now through me. She's not here, but I was with her on, I don't even know what day is it. What day is it? Thursday? I think we were together on Monday.
Yeah.
And I said that you were going to be coming back on and hanging out with me today. And she said, make sure and tell Reverend D how much I love him. So anyway, you get Amy Steinberg's love.
That's awesome. And
so we were talking about musical theater and this and that. And I know in this community, I got myself in trouble. I just don't know much about musical theater. Just going to a play is not my thing. I'm moved, man. My heart's been so open the last couple of days, maybe because my daughter turned 7 and the world's crazy. And, you know, I never knew what it would be like to have your heart walking outside of you. And I've just been really feeling lately. And it's a blessing for sure.
Love it. Love it.
So I know, so since we talked last, Father's Day's come and gone. And as we talked last time we met, your pops passed away recently. How are you doing? How's your family doing with grief? And can you just tell our folks your process with that? Because it's big, you know. We're grieving about a lot of things right now. Grieving being able to move freely. Grieving about you know, just wanting life to be the way that it's supposed to normally is. Things like that. Can you just talk specifically about your family and then generally about grief and where we are?
Yeah. So yeah, my dad passed away March 2nd. So it's still pretty fresh.
Yep.
The grieving, you know, the thing is that, you know, our grieving isn't, at least for me, it didn't start the day that my father passed away. The grieving for me started in 2018 when he was diagnosed with pretty much a terminal illness. So I've been grieving for a while, but the thing that's interesting is that, you know, that grief it's a spiral. It's not a single line trajectory where you move from one thing imperfectly into the next. I mean, my wife and I have been, you know, doing our due diligence of making sure that Netflix stays in business and Hulu over this whole thing, and watching our fair amount of shows and TVs and movies. And I swear, like the 2 weeks leading up to Father's Day, every single thing we watched had something to do with like a father. And I would like I cried myself to sleep one night. Um,
Literally, not just a figure of speech, but literally.
no, literally. Yeah. I literally cried myself to sleep because it was the whole end of this one particular show was I can't remember if it was Parkinson's, what the disease was, but the main character's father ended up passing away in the last episode. And it just showed her heart and like her grieving and her sadness. And there was a brother and then her mother, and everyone was dealing with it in different ways and having waves of anger and then waves of like joy and celebration for his life, and then sadness just for the loss of him not being present. And the gift was, embracing it. It just allowed me to have another moment of just missing him, and I think that's what led up to Father's Day, because it was the night before Father's Day Father's Day itself wasn't so challenging for me. It was the night before. That's when I cried myself to sleep. I just miss him,
Yep.
And we all deal with it in different ways. Like, I love my mother. She's being very hard on herself, like with her own way of dealing with things. And that's what grief is looking like right now for her. I think it's anger and frustration turned, towards herself. I know that's definitely a way that I deal with anger and grief sometimes, is I direct it towards frustration towards me.
As in you could have done something differently, or
Not so much like about my father, but just like right now, like if I forget something, I'm like, oh damn it, how can you, I start jumping all over myself, and it's like, whoa, you just forgot to return a phone call, dude. Okay, sure, you can be upset and frustrated, but like, is it all that? And so I'm noticing that's happening for her, and it happens for me too. And then tomorrow, it'll be a different flavor, So,
yeah. Where do you suppose that comes from? Why do you think we're hard on ourselves when we are like that? Because that's, I mean, all the conversation, today is about racism and the systemic nature of it, and those structures that are in place. That's a structure that's in place too, though.
right.
There's a system about that the self-flagellation, flagellation. I want to get the word right. Those things, like, why do we beat ourselves up like that?
Well, I think it has to do a little bit with personality. If anyone out there is like an Enneagram practitioner or Myers-Briggs or any of the archetypal systems, there's different ways that everyone kind of like has some default ways of being in the world. And one of my default ways is definitely, I can think of it as a kid just playing sports. Like, I would literally yell at myself on the basketball court for screwing up a shot.
Yeah.
And I direct anger this way as opposed to outside of me, where there's other personalities that it all flies out sideways, frontwards, and backwards towards the rest of the world, and it never comes this way. And neither of them are necessarily better. I think it just needs to be, managed.
Yeah.
I was actually just did another podcast with someone, a former member from Bodhi, and we were talking about, what's the biggest thing that scares me and is scary right now, and what's the most hopeful thing. And I think for me, it's the same as the anger and the frustration that people are experiencing, in particular as it relates to social justice. What scares me about it is that there's a lot of, I think, irresponsible anger. Not that the anger is wrong, but how it's being used and
demonstrated.
Yeah.
Demonstrated.
Yeah. There's a little bit of lack of responsibility on some people's parts, and then a lot of that I think just has to do with maturity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that has nothing to do with age. That's just like growth.
Emotional intelligence, right?
Yeah.
Wherever it comes from. Yeah.
And then what gives me hope at the same time is that we need to get angry. We need to use the frustration, I don't know if it was Reverend Michael who first coined this phrase, but I've the first time I heard it, it has stuck with me. Divine discontent.
Mm.
That there is something so spiritual and divine about discontent and frustration and anger, because it's the beautiful symptom that change has to happen, that what is not working is not working. And so at the same time that anger and frustration sometimes can be misplaced or misused or expressed in a way that's sideways or not managed or responsible, the fact that it's so prevalent and present right now, there's an opportunity in the race consciousness to embrace that divine discontent and really honor that it's saying all of the stuff, all of the systems, all of the ways of being. And it's not putting blame on anyone. We're all part of the system.
Yep.
The systems that we are all perpetuating are not working for us. So can we do something productive with this anger and frustration right now?
I think that's one of the challenging. A couple things. First of all, folks, please, as always, give us your comments, your questions. We want you to be as much of a participant in the program today as Daryl and I are, as Reverend Daryl and I are. So please feel free. Don't be bashful at all about questions, comments. Let's mix it up. Let's do it. I first heard divine discontent from Reverend Kathy Ann Lewis back when I was maybe in my early 20s or late teens in Seattle, which is neither here nor there. But there's something to it. In New Thought circles and in religious science of mind, New Thought, unity, there's this idea, there's this Pollyanna thing. There's this idea that if we just get our thinking right, that everything will be fine and hunky dory and this and that. And I've been living life for 40, coming up on 45 years now, and it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
I understand thought and thought being creative, and thought, the general tendency of our thought creating the life that we experience. But we're going to be discontent. It's part of the human condition. And that's an indication that it's time to just put some attention someplace, work on it, grow. I mean, one of my words lately has been messy. The word messy, not the soccer player, MESSY. Messy. That's what life is. It is that, as we're figuring things out, and none of us have anything figured out. We're working on it. So I love the idea of divine discontent. I think at some point every day I feel discontent.
Yeah.
At some point every day. And it could be just a point and not a elongated time.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where like real work happens. We get things done in there, right?
Yeah. It's actually not, I don't think that we want to strive for discontent.
Well, no,
but
it just happens, right?
Right. And I think, from that space of like Pollyanna that you were talking about, is a lot of people think, oh, it's about being all good with everything, and that it's all good. Everything's all good. Yeah. But it's like, no, stuff is not all good. Things are broken. And I think it's a really challenging thing in the realm of like new thought and consciousness, how we hold these principles, right? There's some idea that if we let any light or any semblance of heaviness or darkness, like then that's what the law is going to propagate, right? Mm-hmm. So we can't give it that attention. But if we're not paying attention to the larger field, the larger system, and just like on a car, a light goes on to let us know that something needs our attention. Like, thank God that engine light comes on. Otherwise, I'd be driving another 1,500 miles till my car blew up.
Blew a head gasket, exactly.
Right? Thank God we're experiencing divine discontent, because if we keep pushing it under the surface, then how does it come out? And I think on some level that's something of that the world, not only the United States, the world is experiencing, is there's been a lot of turning the other way, of getting distracted by other things in life, making, you know, some things may be more important to our attention than they need to be. And now the engine light has been on for so many centuries on some level.
Yep.
Man, if we don't pay attention to this engine, to this system, then it's not going to just be broken. It's going to have to be, you know, completely done with, you know?
Well, one of the, yeah. And as part of the sermon I gave last week, I kind of bookended Dr. King's Been to the Mountaintop, some excerpts from his sermon. I pulled about 15 minutes out of that sermon. And he says it's not, one of the things he says in that sermon is it's not between violent, you know, there's a lot of stuff happening in the South and all over the place. He says it's not about violence and nonviolence anymore. It's about nonviolence or non-existence.
Right.
You know, and that's even that's a relationship with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
You know, bring it to the personal level. Nonviolence, you need going back to that self-talk, you know, nonviolence or non-existence. And that violence that we have with ourselves, how does that demonstrate in how we cope with life? You know, if I have a violent dialogue, and I do too, you know, there are times when it's, you know, the negative self-talk, that should have done it better, et cetera, et cetera. We cope with violence in different ways, you know, whether it's out here or whether it's right here.
Yeah.
And substance abuse or abuse, physical abuse,
Mm-hmm.
you know, all the ways that we check out. We got to find a way to cease the violence that happens within us as well. I think that's one of the biggest, and I've listened to that sermon over 100 times, you know, and it just got me in a different way, like non-violence or non-existence, you know, bring it to a personal level. You follow me? Am I making sense here this morning?
I do. I mean, to bring it back to the idea of principle and what we're creating, if violence is still happening, then that is what's being created, period. Whether it's internal or external.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that I've really been thinking about this idea of violence, and this is less about some of the more blatant, overt expressions of it, but a little bit more of that, the quiet violence. And I don't know if I've used the word violence before, but right now it's seeming very potent. The violent act of exclusion and othering is something that happens consciously and unconsciously and has been. And right now, I think in this process of the United States and the world waking up to the impact of othering, there continues to be a conversation and lots of energy put into othering, right? Still finding people wrong and at fault and wanting to shame and guilt them and somehow punish them, right? Now, this doesn't mean that we don't ask people to take responsibility for choices that they've made, to own the implications of things that they've said or things that they've done. And othering is, if we see it as a violent act, then just because someone has propagated othering, but then we then other them because of who they are, we're doing the exact same thing.
Yep.
And so how can we how can we do togethering? How can we find a way? And to me, I think that is one of the, probably the deeper components or aspects of nonviolence, is it's not passive at all. Right. And that's where I think a lot of people get charged up. Well, how can I sit back and let this stuff happen? And it's like, well, you're not letting stuff happen, but you call people out and you come together and say, I don't understand what you're doing. I don't understand why you're doing it, but I'm not going to put my hand up like this and walk away from you. I'm going to walk towards you, not in a threatening way. I want to extend my hand, shake hands with you and say, brother, sister, like something, we've got to come together, because all we're doing is just pushing ourselves more and more away. And we don't have the luxury anymore of space. Like, our world is getting smaller, not because the earth is shrinking. It's just that our literal presence on the planet is getting larger. And so the space that we have, and by the nature of the internet, you know, what we didn't know about the other side of the world just even 50 years ago, all we got to do is a Google search and we can literally see, you know, cameras of the other side of the world.
Yep.
And so we don't have the luxury of not knowing. We know too much now. And to say, I don't want to know, I don't want to understand, because it's not something that's similar to my culture, to my faith belief, to my just, you know, humanist belief, whatever it may be. We don't have the luxury of just kind of stepping aside and going, nope, can't interact with that. We are all charged right now to come together, even especially with the people that maybe anger us, the people that we don't understand, the people that sadden us.
Great point. No,
Yeah.
the word that keeps coming up for me, the idea is trust. And how do you trust? And that's how you build trust, through actually just honest communication with somebody. If I think about my personal relationships and where I really have safety, might be a different word, actually. Safety is a different word, which lives, I think, within an idea of trust, is that we have to tell the truth about where we're at and be willing to listen to each other. Trust transforms, safety transforms things. I think about, again, maybe we've had this conversation, but I have so many friends that don't have the same beliefs as I do, but we sit down, we watch a football game together, we have a beer, whatever it is, and a hot dog, and we just talk about, we're willing to listen to each other.
Yeah.
And that's everything right there. And at the end of the game, or at the end of the time of our hang, we hug each other and, you know, see you tomorrow, whatever it is. You know, this hasn't happened anytime recently, but over the course of, of life, it's just, this is how I see it because of my experience. And I ask questions to understand. And they do the same because I've asked questions to understand. So there's a heart opening that takes place and a trust that's being built that, hey, you're not going to tell me to F off, or that or shame me. There's a lack, I guess, of vulnerability that's there because we're willing to have these honest conversations about things and share where we're at and try to understand each other. And that builds trust. And then within trust, transformation can happen. We've got a couple comments I want to share.
Yeah.
Let's see. So Reverend Darrell, this is for you. Is divine discontent also the power of divine force behind the change? The power that right action will prevail? That's from Linda.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, simply, divine discontent is, I don't think, any other force. It is the force is always the force, and it's moving, and it's wanting to partner with and create with us. And to me, divine discontent is symptomatic that something is in that force is, you know, like I think of Star Wars, you know, like all of a sudden there's a disturbance in the force that Obi-Wan or someone could sense. And to me, that's what divine discontent is. It wasn't that all of a sudden maybe something outside of the force came in and did something and implanted itself. It was just that the force is trying to move as it always does. The law is trying to work as it always does. God is trying to express itself as it always wants to in its divinity, but then something is getting in its way. Something is stymieing it. Something is clogging that flow. And that's where the discontent is. It's indicative that something is holding back or not allowing the free flow. So the right action is always, I think, seeking to prevail itself. It's so, sometimes I wish I spoke more languages that I do, or that we just could like expand the English language, because the word right is so charged, like right action.
I was
And
just
that,
thinking. I was just thinking the same thing. What is right action?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the most of the understanding of the word right is about something being wrong.
Hmm.
And I think the right action, at least the way that I remember and heard it in my initial learning, especially out of the Buddhist tradition, is that it's not about something being wrong. It's like there's just like a rightness. I want to use the word perfect, but that's not a great word either.
When we get down to it, are there any really right words? Isn't this what writers struggle with?
Yeah, yeah,
The words to capture life.
yeah.
It's challenging. Not
It
to
is.
differ from what we're talking about, but it is challenging.
It's very challenging.
Yeah.
But I do think that divine discontent is a part of everything. God is all that there is. So that which we may judge as positive and that which we may judge in our humanness as negative is still God.
Hmm. Has,
Uh,
has to be.
has to be.
Yep.
And most of what we consider to be right or is opinion as opposed to flow, right? So that's how my head and heart kind of moves with that, is like, as opposed to there being a wrong action, there's a flow that seeks to express itself. And just as we may experience constipation in our bowels or congestion in our sinuses when we're inflamed, all we need to do is find a way to reduce that inflammation, and then things flow,
Hmm.
right?
Preach on it.
But
Amen.
when those things are constricting, then the flow can't happen. And there's nothing right or wrong about that. It's just an indicator that what is the natural way of life, the natural way of God in the spiritual context, is having a hard time expressing and flowing through individual or collective experience. And so that divine discontent, that divine inflammation, is seeking something to quell it and to soften it so that it can go back, spiritual Drano,
Spiritual Drano. And, when the body gets sick, it gets a fever to try and figure out how to get the expression back right. I mean, there's something that happens. So in the emotional body, frustration,
Mm-hmm.
anger, irritability without really understanding why. These are symptoms of that blockage. In the same way that we can look to the physical body if we're constipated or whatever it might be, there's something happening that's an indicator. I need to pivot.
Absolutely.
Another comment here from Eager Individual. Pollyanna syndrome, the name being taken from a book of the same title, means an excessively or blindly optimistic person. The occurrence and danger of such attitudes in psychotherapy is discussed. Divine discontent comes when we compare what we are to what we have the power to become. The power of right action can only prevail in the acknowledgement that there is more for us to become. All right, well, amen.
Mm-hmm.
Fulfillment to me is a big word that comes out of that. Like, how can we, whatever it is, we talk about the 4 pillars: health, wealth, creative expression, and relationships.
Yeah.
And constantly welcoming a greater idea of fulfillment in whatever it might be. Like, I'm sure with you and your wife, I would guess that you guys have moments of discontent where you're not communicating on the same level, or there's frustration, and so what do? You communicate, you do a tune-up. You do what you have to.
You have to.
Or what do you do when those things happen?
Right. Whether it's a romantic relationship or any relationship, what do you do? I mean, that's the powerful point. That's the choice point. And most of us don't do anything, or we turn away, or we numb, or we compartmentalize, or whatever psychological term you want to throw at it. Are we willing to come together and acknowledge and embrace and accept and honor what is and what isn't, with an intention behind of that of progression, of growing, of returning to connection.
Hmm.
And that comes back to trust. Right now in the country, most of the conversations that people are having, especially with those that are maybe on the quote unquote other side of the spectrum or the other side of the fence of belief, there is no trust whatsoever. And
You mean if you're on one side of the spectrum and somebody else is on the other?
yeah,
Yeah.
there is a general, and I'm generalizing completely. I'm not saying that everyone is this way, but the overall tone of the country is that if you believe one thing as a Democrat and you believe one thing, and that's the problem, is that it comes down to you have to believe one thing or another to be a true Democrat or a true Republican. And then we associate being a true Democrat being a true American, and a true Republican being a true American. It's like, come on. But anyway, when we get into those extreme swings of the pendulum, the trust that is required to have conversations, I think, is greatest. And the challenge is we don't even trust one another when we're fairly close in belief.
Right.
Because we're always like, well, what are they out to get? What do they want? What do they want from me?
I can trust that you're scheming me.
Yeah. And how often does that happen in romantic relationship, right? Why are you asking me that question? Why are they not listening? You know, like immediately it goes to a place of not trusting. And trust is man, it's, think of like when you've felt trusted or when you've really trusted someone. Like right now, just saying that, all of a sudden my body language, my heart just went, you know? And I completely trust the conversation that we're having. I completely trust deeper than that conversation is that what is seeking to reveal itself in our conversation is the love of the universe, the love of God.
Yeah.
And so it'd be so easy for me to step back and as we're talking, get really heady and I won't even trust myself, right? I won't trust the words that I want to speak.
Yeah.
I was like, no,
yeah.
I'm going to put my faith, I'm going to put my attention on the thing that I know to be powerful, and that is trust. And what I put my trust in is the divine. Whether it expresses itself as contentment or discontent,
Yep.
the divine is what's in back of it. That's the thing I'm going to trust, and that's what allows me to stay in the game. So if we as a nation, if we as partners, as we as business partners, as we as friends, as we as community members, can somehow, before the conversation starts, go, can we agree to trust one another here, that we're trying to point and right our ship in the direction of good for all. And then if someone says, no, I have no desire in making it good for all, I only want it to be good for me, then I'm not saying don't have a conversation with that person, but then at least you can trust where the conversation is going to go.
That and that's it. Trust isn't, we actually learn how to trust people. Like I trust that they're going to be cynical until they're not anymore, and then I can trust them to not. I'm talking generalities.
Yeah.
I trust that whenever I call you, that we're going to have a heart connection, and there's not going to be, hey, how's the weather? We're going to dive right in because that's our relationship. I trust that.
Mm-hmm.
And within that, and that's why I used the word safety earlier. There's a safety, like there's an understanding. And so that's why I love the last thing that you said is we learn what we can trust about another as well. And within that, there's actually room to move.
Yeah.
Because I know I trust this person's kind of like behavioral patterns. I trust that's how they're going to behave or view the world. And then we can have conversations within that might move the needle or might not. Yeah. Adair says, what happens when two sides identify the clog as something completely different? I think we're kind of talking about that just now.
Yeah. I mean,
we got to listen. We have to listen to each other, like really, and hear each other. You know,
yeah.
I just read an email for a meeting I have later today, and it said, can you listen as a heart with ears.
Hmm.
You know, which is, I haven't heard, I mean, I've heard that before. It's not new, but that's it. I love the idea of that, is that because the heart space, the heart chakra, the heart energy loves, and that's what it does. It gives.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have that, like you were just talking about, that head filter of right, wrong, good, bad, all these other things.
There's I'm pulling it directly from a book, The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership, Jim Dethmer.
Hmm.
Um,
We've talked about that. We talked about this a couple of years ago, I think.
yeah, it's a great book, and one of the components in there, one of the commitments is a commitment to fully listen, to actively listen, and there's a powerful page in there where it breaks down this idea that most of us are listening with filters. So when you were talking about like listening as if the heart has ears, the intellect is constantly filtering.
Hmm.
But if we listen with our intellect only, then we're filtering, right? We're filtering to find fault in what someone has to say. We filter to find a way of getting out, right? So like we may not really want to have the conversation with someone. So we're not taking any of the information in really. We're just looking for the window to go, oh, that's great. You know, thanks, sorry, I got a meeting, I got to go. Or we're listening to fix someone. You know, sometimes, how often has it happened? I mean, I know it's happened to me in my role as a minister and practitioner, and I've had to check myself. My wife has called me out on it. She's like, I don't need you to be my practitioner right now. I need you to be my husband and listen to me, right? So we listen to fix people. We listen to fix a situation as opposed to simply actively take it all in. And again, that level of listening where we can, to the best of our ability, remove some of those filters, that's where trust gets emboldened. And to Adair's comment here of like, when two sides, you know, identify a clog as something completely different, you know, I'm trying to think of a specific scenario, but I would argue that more than likely it's filters that are causing things to be seen as different. At the end of the day, if we remove the how, the what of freedom, the what of love, the what of enough, you know, finances to live a full life, enough space and land to go outside and take your shoes off and feel the grass, to be able to, you know, travel to whatever it is that you want to do. Everybody wants that. And the path and the how for everyone to have access to that, that's often different and often completely different. I mean, that's the nature of our government. There's one side that sees it's going this way and another side that goes this way. But if we could like distill it down to, oh, everyone's going towards life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and remove the filters, and we can remember, oh, we can all trust that we're still pointing towards the same deep intent of whatever, you know, the quality may be. There's going to be, all paths lead to God. There's going to be many paths and different ways of, you know, removing clogs or moving through the clog or whatever it may be.
Yep.
I think it's okay for there. I celebrate the difference of seeing things in different paths. I mean, thank God I do. I mean, if I didn't, there'd probably be a lot of relationships that are still present in my life that I wouldn't have.
Yep.
But we were able to sit with it.
Yeah. And if we don't have the differences, things start to get boring.
Yeah.
There's not interesting conversation. You know, if they're on Sunday mornings, if there weren't two teams that wanted to rip their heads off the other guys called NFL football, you know, if they're all on the same team, that's boring to me.
Right.
Just as far as, you know,
yeah,
example of competition, but just, you know, how invigorating it is to have a conversation with somebody that doesn't agree with you.
Yeah.
And
Well,
what I can learn from that. Go ahead, brother.
well, that old phrase of variety is the spice of life. You know,
Mm.
think about, I love to cook, and I just made, you know, chicken breast, kind of boring. You know, it's just, but I tried to make chicken shawarma, you know, with all these different seasonings and flavors. And it's like those spices,
Mm-hmm.
that's what brought some experience to dinner last night. It wasn't the fact that I had chicken. I've had chicken so many times, right? But it was the cumin, it was, you know, the turmeric, it was the garlic and the lemon and the olive oil and the salt and the pepper and all of those things. The variety of those different spice, those things brought the spice of that dish palpable, you know? And what if we approached our planet, our world, our nation, our country, our neighborhoods, our communities with, wow, the variety that is here is actually what brings spice, flavor, excitement. And if we could loosen the need for there to be normal and right in terms of words that are challenging in our language, and that somehow everyone needs to be normal and everyone needs to be right. Um, and as opposed to celebrate the diversity and the difference that is there, it'd be a different way of connecting, a different way of communicating.
Yep. Well, that's what that's the work that's in front of us.
Yep.
That's what we're faced with right now. Okay, a couple questions on it entirely different.
Okay.
Was the chicken tender and juicy?
Oh yes.
Because chicken, and Julia, if you're watching, which she probably is not, that's my question. If anybody says, "Hey, we're gonna have chicken for dinner," I'm like, "Do you know how to cook chicken?" Chicken seems to me like the hardest meat to cook. You know, unless you're gonna fry some chicken or do like a bake. You know, you can fry anything. But if you want to cook chicken a different way, it is a rare individual that I've met that can actually make chicken tender and juicy. Most
Yep.
times it's dry. Someone saying barbecue
Barbecue.
chicken. No, I'm saying if you cook it yourself. Oh, put it on the grill, maybe is what they mean. All right. Well,
I mean, I can't, my mind, this is the way my mind works.
yeah,
Finding the metaphysical in everything, right?
yeah,
Most people don't want to take the time to care for the chicken and to prepare it and to go through the necessary steps for it to maintain some semblance of moisture, to stay flavorful and not dry. It's
yeah,
not quick. You have to give it attention, right? And the more attention you actually give it, the more positive attention you give it, the better the yield is. And to me, it's the same with relationships in terms of trust, right? Not that the chicken breast is necessarily trusting me, you know, but the positive intent that I bring to the preparation is the same sort of attention that we could bring to our relationships, whether it be with another person or with the planet or with an organization. The time and the intent and the purpose. I mean, that's why intention to me is like one of the most important things that anyone, if anyone listening is just kind of like, well, what do I do? Like, you guys are talking about a bunch of like stuff up here and it's cool, but like, what do I do?
yes.
Like, start with recognizing what is your intention when you move forward.
Is
If you,
intention so is intention like a marinade? If we're talking about the chicken, what I'm trying to make it, you know, maybe I'm trying to get a little too interesting here though, but do you take time to really stew in your intention then?
um, yes and no. The way I'm thinking about it as a cooking analogy is like the intent is not. It can get a little sticky here because it's not necessarily intention to me is not always goal oriented and it's not about a goal, right? But intention is more about the experience. And so the intent when it comes to cooking chicken is to have an experience of moist, delicious meat that is not um, dry and kind of right? The intent is to have an experience of joy and excitement and pleasure when it comes to having that meal. So I need to hold that intention throughout the entire process of getting to the meal, from what kind of meat I'm buying, where I'm buying it, what are the ingredients I'm using, how much time am I giving for it to marinate, all of that, up to, even when it comes to, some of the people that aren't meat eaters out there are going to be kind of pissed off that we're not talking.
Think of it a different way.
But still, like, even like the process of cooking, you're not done when like the timer goes off. Oftentimes you have to let things rest before you cut, so that things are retained. And it's like that whole process of like throughout the entire journey to the point that you actually get to having the meal, the intention is to it be an enjoyable experience. Then you have to hold that intention high in all of your decision processes along the way, not just at the beginning, not just in what temperature you decide to cook it at, not just in terms of like, do you baste it? It's everything that you do. And
it's commitment. It's commitment.
And that's so then bring that over to the intention of our spiritual practice or our conversations with people. Is a lot of times, I think this is one of the reasons why I was so committed to this idea of creating a soul gym, right? People come to services on Sunday, or they take a class, or they even, listen to us right now. And there's some semblance of connecting and inspiration. It's like, oh yeah, this is what the spiritual conversation is all about. And then we connect to an intention of connection. We connect to the intention of recognizing and embodying and unifying with the spirit. But then we get off this phone call and we open up CNN and we start reading something that completely takes us off of our intent. Now, it doesn't mean don't look at CNN, but can you bring your intention to how you are viewing and taking in and digesting that news? Can you bring that intention to the conversation that's going to be difficult? That is the power of intent. And that is, to me, a practice that is unending. Unending. Like there's no intention that's better than another. You just have to keep practicing and asking yourself, what is my intent? And does this intent still match?
Yep. So back to the cooking analogy. So if you fall off intent or open up CNN and you go down the rabbit hole of whatever, otherness and othering, that'd be like, hey, I'm cooking chicken, whatever. I can't remember the name of what you, and then all of a sudden you start preparing hamburger helper.
Yeah.
It's just, the equation doesn't work.
Yep.
You're cooking chicken, what's the name of it? Chicken what?
Warma.
Warma?
Warma.
Chicken warma. And then, am I still not saying it right?
Shawarma.
Oh, shawarma. Not warm chicken. Chicken warma.
I mean, it's warm.
Chicken shawarma, but then I go and pull out a box of hamburger helper or whatever it is. And yes, for all the vegans and vegetarians, God bless you. Forgive us, but this is the world we live in. That we live in. That's kind of the same thing, though. You want to maintain consistency in the process.
Yes.
What you're intending. Having an end result in mind, then, as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole process of visioning, right? Of tapping into a possibility and holding that possibility as true. But then as you navigate towards it, what is the intention? Not like how in terms of like, how do you get there, but how are you being as you go towards that vision?
Yeah.
There was another cooking analogy that had nothing to do with me. Oh, hummus. Hummus is pretty simple, right? It's garbanzo beans, maybe a little tahini, lemon juice. You can add some other flavorings in there. But what I have found that makes a hummus good is the quality of the attention given to the paste that is made, right? So to spend time and to really, if you put it in a blender or a food processor, a recipe may say, spin it for 30 seconds, take it out, and it's good to go. And if you just go, oh, okay, yeah, 30 seconds is done, you throw it into a jar, the party starts, or you have some friends over, and they're like, How's the hummus? Oh, it's okay. Like there was no attention given beyond just what was there. Did you really give your intent of creating something delicious as you were looking at the consistency of it? Did you give it your time and your full attention? Was it a quality attention that you brought to it?
Yeah.
Um,
Is that what makes grandma's cooking so good?
yes.
That's it, isn't it? There is an ingredient called love, isn't there? Like a real ingredient called love.
Love and attention.
Yep.
Yeah.
Amen. You know what I think? We're going to do this again in a few weeks.
Okay.
Do you want to do a cooking class?
Sure.
Also, like set it up and let's talk metaphysical cooking then.
Yeah.
Let's put a recipe together. You can. Folks don't want to cook what I've got, but I'll learn something from you, and maybe I'll do one down the road. Let's do it though. Metaphysical cooking, the ingredients, how you do it, intentionality, and talk about it from an elevated standpoint. The only thing is, how are we going to get everybody to be able to have a bite of it? I see. Maybe one of the next steps in technology is that we're going to be able to smell through our devices.
Yeah.
You know, at least smell somehow.
Well, I mean, it would take some planning, but we actually did this. The meditation studio that I work with for our members, we did a cooking class with a chef in Italy, and so what was determined at the beginning was what is the dish. Everyone got a shopping list ahead of time, and then everyone cooked as it was. You know, like in terms, we were bringing mindfulness into the kitchen, like the intention of how you prepare food.
Yep.
So people didn't have to prepare anything. I mean, there was a lively conversation that was a part of it without, making your own pasta. And there was something pretty cool about, people watching the chef and talk through the various steps and stages, and they could, mirror and mimic along the way.
Yeah. That's my cousin in Brooklyn. She's a pretty well-known chef in Brooklyn. And we've done a couple cooking classes with her, the Brooklyn Kitchen. So yeah. So, but I think just to watch, just to have an interactive conversation of you cooking even the chicken shawarma.
Yeah.
Watch you do that, and then we'll just watch you eat it.
Yeah. Or maybe I could guide you through it, and we cook together, and then you could actually experience some decent chicken.
The two of them, for real. Praise be. That could be fun. I think folks might enjoy watching that. Let's see, Adair. So a conversation may always have the intention of connection ultimately. Hope so. I mean,
I don't think it always does.
It doesn't. That's why I say I hope so. It's a different kind of connection, different kind of conversation when you have that intentionality.
Yeah.
All right, we're coming up to the top of the hour. I love you, brother. I love you, Seth.
I love you too. I'm so grateful. If I can just express gratitude, even for the folks that I can't necessarily see, this is dialogue. This is conversation, and even though we're having it and directing it a little bit, I think there's something powerful about pausing to have this level of connection and conversation. And I know personally for me, if I can just acknowledge you, Charles, that the invitation to have this conversation it's feeding my heart in that it's breaking up kind of the mode of my day that I find myself in, but it's also doing something to really stir and refine the message of spirit that is wanting to move through me right now. Because that's one of the things I've been grappling with, as we all are. It's like, what's mine to do? What is mine to say? How do I want to say it? And I just keep getting more and more convicted in this space of, I want to be a champion for getting people in the room together, in particular, and not try to find rightness, not try to find who's good and who's bad and who's wrong and who's right. I want to get everyone, as Rumi says, I want to go into that field that transcends that. I want to get everybody out there together. Like that to me is what's going to make the next 100,000, 2,000 years. This is a moment right now that when we're gone, hopefully in the history books, they're going to go, oh man, there was a shift in consciousness that happened.
Amen.
A really, really big shift in consciousness. And to me, the way I want to contribute is by not trying to find my necessarily cohorts that believe exactly the way I do. I want to help us come together and rub shoulders with even what we don't understand. And this is helping me understand and articulate that. So thank you so much for this.
Love it. Amen. You're welcome. It's always a blessing to be with you, and you're welcome. Yeah. Couple of announcements real quick, and then I'm going to ask Reverend Darrell to just give us a couple chords and maybe just a song of gratitude, something to end our program today. So tomorrow, Dr. Joe and I will be together. Beautiful people. And then Saturday we've got our meditation. Sunday we've got another service, and the next week we roll out another week of programming, which I'm working on right now. And please, we continue to welcome your financial support of our center as we continue to be about the work of providing food, spiritual food for the world. That has a substantive difference. It makes a substantive difference and contribution. So please go to the website, cslpalmdesert.org. You can contribute there. There's so many different ways you can call into the center. We appreciate you very much. And see you tomorrow in just about 23 hours. It's Reverend Darrell. Let's hear from him, and then we'll conclude our time together. So Reverend D, bring us home.
All right. Grateful, I'm grateful, I'm grateful. Grateful, I'm grateful, I'm grateful. My gift to you is gratitude. Oh, yes, I'm grateful. Oh, yes, I'm grateful. I'm so grateful for you, brother. Thank you to you and your community.
Amen. Peace and love. See y'all tomorrow. God bless you.